going to tell you what I thought about when I came back from the Christmas break after receiving the data from the second all week. And I realized, okay, my kids with the fractions is going to be that standard that I need to make sure that I really focus on and then retaining the skills. So fractions is a big in 5th grade. We know that's a big majority of our tests. I think, 29 to 35% of the tests. So I had to come up with some things to do in my classroom to make sure that we could retain those skills, okay? For my morning work, when we came back in January, I said, I gotta figure out something for my students to do. I give them word problems. Well, my word problems may consist of 2 problems a day. They have to report to me before they go to homeroom class. They have to work in my classroom to make sure that they're actually solving. They do this independently, and they have to show me their work, and if it's not right, I'll say, okay, let's go back and look at it. And by the time all 3 classes come to me, I've had some students who successfully, they solve the problem, and they are allowed to go back to their homeroom classroom. I'm not sure if Mr. Taylor knows all that, but I don't want to turn his head. That's good. All right, this is a sample of what I was giving them back in January. It's just a quick, it's a NF maybe 1, and I focus on those things. Like I said, we were low end, and that was an NF 4. And just getting them to write the equation. If they're able to write the equation, that means they're understanding the operation. And I have them to solve the equation here. Number 1 was an NF2 because it's a word problem. Adding and subtracting mixed numbers with unlike denominators. And number 2, the second one was an NF4, which they had to multiply. Or if they think about it, if they can't multiply, they can add. So if you look at that, that's what I give them as they walk in the door. So after they complete that, then I came to February. I was like, okay, why am I typing all of this when I can use that PearsonRealize.com to go there and create problems for their morning work? Well, after doing it for at least 3 weeks in February, I found that the paper works best for them because they come in on a Monday and they don't score as high, and they're telling me, I didn't feel like it. I just didn't feel like doing the work with the computer. So I'm having to go back and forth with them to see what's gonna really work. So their work is looking like this when they have to do the computer work. I just have them to write their name, I have a date for them already, and the morning work is gonna say Pearson Realize, and then the assignment is titled whatever I have for that day. Like for the month of February, everything has been February 18th, 2019 morning work, and then they write down their score, they turn it into me. On the computer, they can work in their homerooms. And notice that I said, turn in the slip when you're finished. You must score 70% or greater. I'm not reassigning your morning work. And the reason I don't reassign is because sometimes they have to come in during an activity and then they can rework on it. And I can kind of see where they're going wrong. They're able to also go back in there and say, I understand why I missed. I put in the wrong number or my calculations were not correct. So when they give you your scores, don't believe them if you choose to use this because you tell them I have the power to go back in. When they go in, they're able to see the morning work and they can click on it and then they get started and they tell you, I made a 75 and that grade was really a 57. And then you pull up their scores. One of my students said, I made a 75, and then when I'm going and looking at the scores myself, you can actually see that he really didn't make that 75. And everybody else, they're being honest. So you're gonna have some students who are not honest with what they're doing, but you have that power to go in to do that. And I wanted to bring up the line plot because I know we're probably struggling right now trying to get our students to realize that if we've covered fractions, the line plot is very similar to multiplying fractions, adding those. So I'm thinking I'm going to use this to help increase that score because mine was pretty low when we took the midterm test. And first of all, I'm going to have them to start writing down questions they could possibly ask. And then after they write them down, I'm going to have them to solve their own questions because I mean, it's just they're not understanding that it's simply adding fractions or mixed numbers, and it's simply multiplication. So I'm just gonna use this to create it, and go from there. And my incentive for 70% or greater, they are allowed at some point in my class, math prodigy. I give them 10 minutes of recess. They think that's the best thing ever because we can, stop, go outside for 10 minutes and come back in. Kahoot is a biggie for them. They like going on Kahoot. Now I also give them bonus points towards their daily grade if they need it. Now I never tell them what the incentive is because I want them to always come in wanting to do the morning work. And we only work on this until 7:50 because from 7:50 to 8:50, we're doing campus learning, reading, and math, and we alternate days. And so
they're like some of our best practices, and so I start my class the same way every day with a daily review. I used to call it calendar math, and I used to have all my kids sit on the carpet, and we would do fun things with the calendar, but that doesn't really work this year for my kids. So we just do a daily math review, and this is what we're gonna do tomorrow. But I use it as a way to spiral standards that maybe they haven't gotten yet, important standards that need to be covered the whole year. And I also use it to pre-teach standards that are really important on the test that I know we're not gonna get to until later on. And so one of the things I notice with my kids is that they're really low in number sense. And so the first thing that we do every day is I have a number. It usually goes with the date. They don't actually ever notice that, but it just helps me pick a different number every day. And they have to round it because rounding is something that they don't necessarily get all the time. And then they have to use their number sense to add 300, like this one is 300, but I change those every day too. So it might be 200 more, 300 less, 20 more, 30 less. Where they don't have a piece of paper, they have to think about the place value and what 20 less than that would be. So this would actually be a very hard one for them, like 20 less than 2019, because that would change the thousands place too. So only my higher kids would usually get that, but then they would explain how they got it. I usually put a word problem. This one I'm kind of pre-teaching two-step equations, two-step word problems, because we haven't got to that yet. That's the last standard that we covered, but it's important that they know. Time is one that we don't usually get a lot of. It takes the kids a long time to get elapsed time, so that's what that third one is. This one is kind of where my teaching is. Oh, I didn't fill in that last one. We haven't talked about patterns yet, so that's what the multiplication is. They're gonna through pre-teaching, they know that even times even isn't even times an odd isn't even, odd times odd isn't odd. So I don't even usually I have really big numbers like 24 times 26. They don't know how to do that in third grade, but they can tell me, oh, that's gonna be an even product. I also pre-taught area this way, so when we got to area, we could just jump into the harder concepts. And then usually down here is a measurement review, so they didn't, on their tests last quarter, they didn't do too well on, it was measurements of cylinders and then balances, grams and kilograms, liters and milliliters. So I alternate what I put there. Sometimes I'll put word problems with that. Sometimes I'll put word problems with a balance. And then the last thing that I do every day, well, two more things, is a graph. So it changes. I'll keep the same graph every week, but I'll just ask different questions about it. This is also kind of pre-teaching. I don't actually ever teach graphs for a week. I just teach it throughout the year. So this week is a pictograph. Last week was a bar graph. And then I also do line plots this way too. And I just change the questions that go along with that. And then we're talking about shapes too. So we've talked about quadrilaterals. So every day they'll show me what parallel lines look like, what perpendicular lines look like, what a right angle looks like. And then we talk about, I have a picture and they'll show me the rectangles, the triangles, where they see parallel lines, where they see perpendicular lines. And I do all this in about like 15 minutes. That's just one way that I start my math block. And so the way that I pick the standards, I think that's like, I want everybody to take that away, is I just went through and I focused a lot on the measurement and data standards because last year when we got our test results back, personally, like in 3rd grade, my scores were lowest in measurement and data. And so that's what I've chosen to focus a lot on, so maybe next year they won't be as low. I also focus a lot on standards that I know from past experience take the kids a lot longer to fully grasp. So time is one of them, patterns, and then the 2 sub-word problems. But that's just one of the things I use because they're constantly reviewing standards and then seeing things over and over every day. So that's it.
My name is Crystal Bill. I teach 5th grade at Gary Road. That's my team over there. Well, the direction I was going in for when I was asked to do this was basically to tell our best practices. And I've come up with some norms over the years of me teaching. I've taught several subjects, but I went from teaching 4th and 5th grade ELA last year to now going back to math. So I had to just establish some norms for myself because when I first started, I was kind of like all over the place. So the first thing I did was establish rituals and routines, which basically is be consistent with your teaching practices and expectations. So they know what's expected of them every day they come into the classroom. Make a schedule and stick to it as much as possible. That was a big thing for me because I tend to talk too much if I don't have an assigned time to what I'm supposed to be doing. And students perform better when they know what is expected of them each and every day. So I go over the learning target, we go over the entry task, just so they know what are they expected to complete by the end of the class. Next, I came up with the class schedule. Like I said, I tend to over talk or over teach, and I found that by the end of my class, they weren't getting as much practice as they needed because I talk too much. So we do problem solving for the first 15 minutes. I go over the learning target and entry task, takes about 5 minutes. Guided practice is usually about 10 to 15 minutes. I do have a timer student to keep me on task, and they will tell me time's up. I do the exit ticket before I do the independent practice. Some people don't do that, but that's just a formative assessment for me before the independent practice, so I know exactly who to visit by the time they get to independent practice. Sometimes I do independent practice maybe like the 2nd day and so forth, and I do collaborative learning the first day because we're just learning new concepts. Next, I teach concepts, not tricks, because I found that at the beginning when we first started fractions, they had butterflies all over the paper. And it had nothing to do with adding and subtracting fractions. So they were just remembering tricks that they learned before and not really understanding the concept behind why they would do or when to do the butterfly method. So make sure you're teaching math concepts using mathematical vocabulary in an academic conversation. I know we were doing measurements and we were doing converting. They were saying going from a large unit to a small unit. We're not going anywhere. It's converting from a large unit to a small unit. So I try to get that academic vocabulary in so they'll be familiar with the vocabulary on the test. Provide simple steps for students to follow for each concept. I try to break it down, especially for my lower students who are all over the place once they start independent practice. They don't know where to start to, activate their prior knowledge. If you're going to do a trick, like I said, make sure students understand why the trick works. Their favorite trick is adding zeros. They say, all you have to do is add the zero. Well, you're not really adding or taking away zeros. It's a concept behind it. You're multiplying by 10 or dividing by 10. Start with what students should be able to do by the end of 4th grade and work your way up. A lot of times we do planning. We take out the scaffolding document just to see what they're supposed to be or what they're supposed to know how to do by the end of 4th grade. This is my favorite, create a positive learning environment. Students should feel safe to ask questions, answer questions, and make mistakes. Oftentimes, and I found this out from my own students, because I could not figure out why they would never ask questions. Even though we always say, ask questions, ask questions. Do you have any questions? They don't say anything, and then they sit there and they don't know what's going on. So I asked them why they didn't ask questions. And this is what they told me. They're embarrassed, not from us, but from their peers. They think their peers are gonna laugh. They think they're gonna make fun of them, and they think that they're not gonna seem as smart. So, like I said, oftentimes students feel more embarrassment from their peers than they do from their teachers. Sometimes we embarrass them too without knowing. And have conversations with your students and set the tone for how classroom discussions should go. A lot of times when I call on a student, I make other students put their hand down, because I know that it's a lot of pressure when you're trying to answer a question. You have 50 hands up, you know, and it seems like everybody knows the answer but you. So I make them put their hands down. And encouragement goes a long way. I try to incorporate different learning styles. I put a couple pictures here. I tried to add a video when we did a measurement wrap. I couldn't figure it out. Some examples include we do hands-on projects, music, manipulatives, movement, and we try not to give out so many worksheets. This first picture here, we did fractions with Hershey's. So they were excited about that. They brought in their own Hershey's, and of course they ate them afterwards. And then we did a decimal project where they brought in sales ads, and they had a total of $75, and they had to spend it the way they want to. You would actually think that they were at Kroger. They tried to buy steak and potatoes and all kind of stuff that they would normally eat. Formative assessment, I know we talked about that today. Use formative assessment during instruction to provide immediate feedback. When you provide immediate feedback, it allows you to see if students are actually working. Some of them just sit there and wait for you to go over it because they don't know what they're doing or they don't want to do it. If they know that I'm coming around checking, they're going to do it. And it allows you to see who needs individualized instruction, small group instruction, or if you need to reteach a lesson altogether. And sometimes I get that from my exit ticket if I walk around and I see that no one got it right, or the majority of them didn't get it right in the exit ticket. I stop my lesson and I reteach it another way that they would better explain, and I give it another exit ticket. Feedback also provides those students who understand the concept, or when they get the concept, instant gratification and builds confidence. They love to see checks on their paper. They're gonna come back, they're gonna rework it and come back just so they get a check. I don't even get to finish all of my class before some of them are coming back just so I can put a check on the paper. So that works. I had another slide on here, I don't know what happened to it, but some instructional materials that I use Envision, of course. I love the visual learning part of it, and the Practice Buddy is very rigorous, more rigorous than the textbook. I use vocabulary. I love it because I love music. I like doing raps and things like that, so we use that a lot. I use a math practice test to do sample questions, and some fun games they like to get on is Freckle and Prodigy. Sometimes I let them get on Cool Math if they've completed all their assignments just for an incentive. But that's it.
I like to have different types of engagements for the kids to making sure that I can incorporate for all learners. Another resource that I use is called Give Ethic, and one of the things it has tons of resources for you to incorporate not only math but read alouds. So and then also video. So this is on inches, feet when we were doing measurement. So it gives them resources that they can think about, real life items, how long that is, or that's an inch, that's a foot, that's a yard. So this little catchy little songs, I think, helps them to learn skills that you're teaching in your classroom. And these resources are free. You just have to just sign up. It's just another, I think about another password, another user ID, but it's helpful. I just write them down and keep a log of different ones that I have. And 3D Shapes is just another video. It talks about the shapes, the attributes of the shape, which helps them to remember those particular attributes for 3D shapes. And when you get in this resource, the community collection, there's tons of books for 4th of July, biomes, sharks, and then there's auditory books that you just listen to, and the kids have to envision the characters, which I like them listening to those. And I made another slide, just so you can see all the different books available that you can incorporate for math. That I think the more you have to reach all different learners is beneficial for them. Learn Zillion, most of you are probably familiar with that. I like Pearson Realize. I go under the visual learning bridge that helps them to think, make those connections, time for them to know exactly what skills they're going to be learning that particular day. So I think that's really handy. It really helps my kids. And I want to do the quiz trade. If you haven't heard that, if you can participate and pretend you're a second grader. And I'll talk about the plus and delta. The interactive notebook is just something I have when we do vocab, and I give them an example, and I have them to make an example. And if we're doing something or we're reviewing, if based on the entry task, they can always go back to their interactive notebook and look and see what they forgot, or a skill, or if they forget what an expanded form is, and I'll just say, go back and look in your notebook. The entry times, what I noticed when we have the district assessments, when the kids don't perform according to my expectations, I have that as a review for the entry task. It's just a way that I want to reach the whole class at one particular time, especially if it's 40% or 30%. If there's a skill, I make sure that I put it part of the entry task. So the quiz trade, the way it works is students, they quiz a partner, get quizzed by a partner, and then trade cards to repeat the process for a new partner. So the teacher tells them to stand up, put your hand up, and then pair up. So they decide who goes first when you meet your partner. One of the things I teach them is how to greet someone. Hi, how are you doing? It's good to see you. And when you exit, when you switch cards, you want to say something nice. You want to say, we make a great team, you're awesome, we're smart. You know, I knew we could do it. Something just to praise them, that they know that they can work as a team and collaborate together. So if you don't mind, if you would participate with me, I'm going to give you a card. So you just stand up, hand up, and you're going to pair up.
Bet teachers wish their second graders were like y'all, kind of laid back.
They just take everybody. You are standing, get your hand up, and greet someone.
Well, I'm supposed to tell you who I am. I'm Victoria. And I'm Ava. Okay. Would you like to go first? Okay.
My resident is 40 inches long, Josh Brazil 49 inches long, as long as Josh Brazil, writing the equation, use B for the unknown number. The equation would be 49 minus 40 would be equals B. So the answer would be 9. We have to subtract.
Okay. Lindsay's necklace measured 17 inches. Dominique's necklace measured 25 inches. How much longer is Dominique's necklace than Lindsay's necklace? Write an equation. Use N for the unknown number. Okay, the equation would be 25 minus 17 equals N. Dominique's necklace is 8 inches longer than Lindsay's.
Maybe it's just 4 plus 5 equals 9. Maybe because I'm not sure that second grade is multiplication in arrays.
But it should be repeated addition though.
Y'all I'm not going to be very long because my voice is leaving me. So bear with me. If you need me to repeat something, I will. I teach at both in elementary and 5th grade. I'm really big on having fun while learning. When I was asked to do this, my best practices. We know what we do every day, but how do we really get our students engaged? Last year, I struggled. Like, it was a struggle for me to motivate my students. I spent more time trying to motivate my students than anything. And, you know, we go out and buy stuff. I know I'm really big on buying donuts. I'll go buy, you know, it's not healthy. But, you know, they won't ride the kids, whatever works. But I noticed that once they finished the donut, once they finished the piece of candy, it was like over with. So it's really short term. So I spent a lot of my time finding ways to reach my babies. So my presentation today is on engaging students. Students interest. As I was listening to some of you all talk, and I listened to some of my babies, I actually listen and I know what they are interested in. One of the things I've got to put up is YouTube. They can find a way to get to YouTube. Fortnite. The boys love Fortnite. I know what ages of second grade through 5th grade in here, and pretty much all grade levels here about Fortnite. I'm pretty sure. I feel like these are our biggest competitors when we're inside the classroom. Because when the kids leave and go home, this is what entertains them. And it's like we're competing because we're inside the classroom. Oh, I taught this. I said that over and over. And they don't get it because they're not engaged. Yeah, we did say it. But they're not engaged. It's not interesting to them. And just like us, even as an adult, if it's not interesting to us, it goes in one ear and out the other one. Dancing, my girls love dancing. They love dancing. So that's another thing that I've noticed. Songs and raps. Kids can, what I've noticed, we can go over things in class and we can go over some of the same things that we say over and over, and a child can barely repeat that, but they can repeat a song. They know the words verbatim. And so what I find myself doing is taking all this, and even technology, like I said, once they get home, they have tablets, they have computers, games, and I find myself, well, as educators, we find ourselves, whether we know it or not, we're competing against those because we're having to keep their attention inside the classroom. So I find myself incorporating games, dancing, songs, and raps, and technology into my lesson all the time. Like anything that we do inside the classroom, it has research to back it up. So it says the teachers play a vital role in their students' engagement and motivation. Although much is intrinsic to the student, research has found that teachers play a vital role on their students' motivation and engagement. And like I just stated, we can say that I taught that all the time. Sometimes I find myself repeating myself like a robot, and then I have to realize, okay, so they'll get it. Once we play this game, and once I incorporate this dance move, once I incorporate this song, they'll get it. Compared to less engaged peers, Engaged students demonstrate more effort, experience more positive emotions, and pay more attention in the classroom. And this is research-based information. And some of the suggestions that I do, creating rapping songs that include content. I actually have a video on my phone where I videoed some of my students. My principal said, well, send it to me. For some reason, I was having trouble. One of my daily grade assignments were that the students we give them vocabulary words, but research shows that once you write down the word and the definition, the kids don't necessarily learn it. And that has become a common practice between, for a lot of teachers. So if kids interact with vocabulary, they tend to keep it. And what we did with some of our vocabulary words, I had them to create a rap. Using their vocabulary words, I was able to see whether they understood or used it in the sense that it's supposed to be used, the word. So I actually had 3 videos on my phone that I was not able to put on here, so that's not on here. I also allow students to practice in game form. There's about a game of every standard we teach, every skill we teach, there is some type of game for it. My students, some of them struggle coming to me not knowing multiplication facts. We spend 5 minutes every day in class working on fluency. So those students who have not grasped or have not memorized I hate to say memorized, but at 5th grade they have no other choice but to know them because of the skills that we have. We're working on fluency for 5 minutes and then we're moving on. So our fluency practice daily is also in the game form. I don't like, no offense if anybody uses it, I don't like the drills. I don't like the drill sheets because it's boring to the kids. So what we do, sometimes we do like a math relay. I would have like a multiplication fact. First person that runs up, you have 2 lines, and the kids love it because I do boys versus girls. They're so competitive, and it's kind of like they'll run up, and I have a flashcard. First person says it gets it. The person who does not say it, they have to sit down. And it's kind of like, oh, I didn't get you today, but I got you tomorrow. So they're really competitive. Create educational experiences for students that are challenging. Again, they're competitive, and they like to challenge themselves. But some students like, okay, well, there's another fluency game that we do where they have to get as many. It's not a drill, but it's kind of like a drill. I'm not sure if anybody here uses it. It's on factmonster.com, and the kids have to get as many as they can completed in 2 minutes. But it's on the computer, and they can see the time. So some of them challenge themselves. Well, I maybe have 82 today, but I'm going to shoot for 85 tomorrow. And enriching, and they extend their academic abilities. And that's my presentation.
Next to share is my questioning, posing questions in math class. For those of you who have visited my math class, I very seldom do all the work. I feel like we're on the page, so you do the work. It's just me. So my students are the ones who are working, who are teaching. I just asked the question. So Ms. Clemens, tell me how you got that. And I step back, and then she explained, and I say, well, sweetheart, you think she's right? Then, no, she ain't right. Oh, yes, she is. She did this wrong. So I'll just pretty much go with questioning. Ask questions, listen the whole time they're, explaining. I'm listening and only making corrections. Well, instead of the top number, we say numerate. And very little input. But you can learn a lot, which Dr. Lemon was saying, formative assessment. You learn a whole lot just by your questioning. You said explain, questions. Okay, reflect. We stop sometimes and what's another way that we can work that problem or solve that problem? Anyone else came up with a different answer? Because not necessarily his answer is wrong, but you may have thought, well, my answer is better than his, or I worked my problem better, so I feel that my answer is right. So that gives you an idea of who's getting it, who's not getting it. My students always come to the board and work the problem. Very seldom do they just sit there and I'm solving the problem. Someone at a table or at a group has to come up and solve the problem. Sometimes I have 2 people up there solving the problem together. And Susie looking at John like, well, he got this and you racing, but that's called I call it know your role, pretty much. And if you know me, we use what the student language the student use. Do you know your role? Do you know how to solve this problem? Do you have a clear understanding what the question is asking you? And allow students to ask questions from one another. Not all the time they are talking or saying Fortnite or what happened on the Xbox. They are actually asking, how you get that? And then just, let them solve it or explain it. Because believe it or not, they learn better from their peers than they do us. By that time, they have tuned us out and they're listening to what their friends are saying. So oftentimes, that's my biggest strategy, allowing the students to ask questions, to demonstrate their work, and I'm just inputting. No, let's see, can we try it another way? Or I think we could do it this way and get to the same answer, or do you want to explain, or can you justify? And most important, allow students time to respond. Oftentimes we'll say, John, can you tell me what's 3 times 5? Susan, what's 3 times 5? Allow them time to really sit and think about what you said or what you asked them, and allow them time to, respond. Not like 5 minutes, but a good 30 seconds to 1 minute. And then you can get some input from the students. So my biggest teaching strategy is just ask some questions.